Today, a coalition of environmentalists held this news conference on the Bush administration's environmental policy. The event was hosted by the group Environmental Media Services. It's just over a half hour.
Thank you all for coming. My name is Gene Karpinski. I'm director of the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, which is a national lobbying office for state PIRGs across the country. With me are a number of distinguished guests and colleagues who each of us will be making very brief remarks, and we'll have plenty of time for questions. I also want to start by thanking Environmental Media Services and Arlie Shart and his capable staff for helping to arrange this tremendous event. For Earth Day this year, we have a very clear message. Behind closed doors, the Bush administration is helping big corporations trample our environmental laws. Because of this massive and ongoing assault, national environmental groups across the country have coordinated on a month-long series of events to tell the story about the attack on our environment and public health, from clean air to clean water, from wildlife to wild forests to wild places. We're doing a series of campaign activities this month. They include investigative reports that shine the spotlight on these problems. They include a series of print ads, like the one you see there today that appeared in papers across the country on the general story. They include a series of issue-specific ads on 8 different issues that you see in front of you. They included a collaborative website called repeorters.org, and we urge citizens who want to be involved in this campaign to go to that website to take action. And finally, they include a television ad that we're running in 9 diverse TV markets across the country. And the message of all these campaign materials is very clear. We're asking the public to send a loud and clear message to the Bush administration: stop letting big corporations trample our environmental laws. So we could take 1 second and show the television spot, and then we'll have the other speakers introduce themselves and speak.
Big corporations are asking the Bush administration exactly what they want. The problem is, they're getting it. Send a message to the Bush administration to stop helping big corporations trample our environmental laws. Go to repeorters.org.
Good morning. I'm John Adams. I'm the president of the Natural Resources Defense Council, and we're glad you're here. I've been asked to do a bit of an overview. Earth Day is especially important this year because it provides an opportunity to call the public's attention to how much is at risk to our environment. Our environmental laws have worked to improve the quality of our life by reducing smog, cleaning up our water, rescuing threatened wildlife species, helping to protect some of America's great places like the Arctic. Our record of protection has been, in fact, an envy of most of the world. Now these popular programs are threatened by a broad array of rollbacks. Rollbacks at the environmental agencies of the Bush administration and indeed at the White House itself. NRDC has completed a report which is in your package. And the report is called Rewriting the Rules, the Bush Administration's Assault on the Environment, and it's nrdc.org, and you'll get it at our website if you wish. This documents more than 90 retreats on key environmental issues at 6 federal agencies and at the White House. I urge all of you to take a moment, review this comprehensive assessment. The report is an indictment of the Bush administration's environmental record. The agency assaults documented there span the spectrum of our most important laws and worthwhile environmental programs, including rollbacks on clean air, clean water, hazardous waste, mining on public land, and of course, global warming. In just a moment, you'll hear a quick summary of the range of compelling examples that have been pulled together from this report and from the programs of all of the groups that are represented here by their leaders. The clear message that we should all take away from this is, with federal agencies taking their cues from corporate America, our landmark environmental laws face the gravest challenge they have ever faced. We must shine a light on these assaults and then turn back these wrong-headed and backward-seeking programs. Thank you very much.
I'm Roger Slickeisen of Defenders of Wildlife. Environmental groups today are accusing the Bush administration of massively abusing its executive authority by working with its industry supporters in order to subvert and undermine our major environmental laws. This report shows that the administration has established a clear pattern of assisting its supporters in the mining, logging, oil and gas and development industries to fundamentally try to weaken or eliminate wildlife protection laws that are in the matter of federal law. Defenders and other groups will be going to court in order to prove that many of the anti-environmental actions taken by Interior Secretary Norton and other wildlife officials are not only abuses of their authority, but are also illegal under federal law.
Good morning and happy Earth Day. I'm Dr. Robert K. Musil. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of Physicians for Social Responsibility. The Bush administration, as we have heard, is wrecking our laws that protect our air and our kids' health. That is precisely because big power companies and corporate lobbyists are telling them what to do. That is, gut the enforcement of the Clean Air Act and then put up a smokescreen announcement today on Earth Day in the Adirondacks, when the administration will announce proposals that will actually allow pollution to increase. The president's plan today will allow 36% more nitrogen oxide, 50% more sulfur dioxide, and 3 times the amount of mercury currently permissible. The result, more smog, more acid rain, more asthma, more cancer, more cardiovascular disease, more premature death. They should have consulted doctors before spin doctors.
Hello, I'm Craig Obie. I'm Vice President for Government Affairs at the National Parks Conservation Association. The administration, as everyone here is saying today, is trampling laws that are supposed to be protecting our national parks from pollution. And power companies and snowmobile manufacturers are showing the way. The administration's policies on air are unhealthy for our parks and for the people who use them. Power companies continue to pollute parks across this country, and the administration's plans to roll back New Source Review and other Clean Air Act protections against smog and haze in our parks are making a bad situation far worse. Snowmobiles continue to pour polluted air into our first national park, Yellowstone. The administration must choose to protect parks and people, not the big energy interests. And we hope that people will take action on this campaign by going to saveourenvironment.org.
Good morning. I'm Debbie Cease with the Sierra Club. A year ago, behind closed doors at the White House, Ken Lay and other executives from Big Oil were telling Vice President Cheney exactly what they wanted in an energy plan. Lo and behold, when the White House rolled out their energy plan, it was a red carpet for the oil industry, full of big giveaways to the oil, coal, and nuclear industries. But the White House plan for America's energy future fails to reduce our dependence on oil, fails to produce more electricity from clean renewable sources like solar and wind, fails to make our cars and SUVs go further on a gallon of gas, and fails America as an energy future. Americans want a better energy plan, one that reduces our dependence on foreign oil, one that keeps our skies cleaner and our public lands protected.
Good morning, I'm Bonnie Raitt. I'm here on behalf of a lot of artists who, among the groups that they work with, the Musicians United for Safe Energy was founded and did a lot of work on the no nukes issue, and I'm here today in support of the efforts to try to stop the mobile Chernobyl that Yucca Mountain is. It would give the green light to building new reactors and continue generating waste and storing it on site for decades to come if Yucca passes, to come at over 100 existing reactors across the country. Even if Yucca were to open and fill up 40 years from now, there would still be as much waste at reactor sites as there is today. It has a very active earthquake zone and leaks water like a sieve right under this proposed site. It sits atop a drinking water supply that would become contaminated with radioactivity if waste is buried there. Atomic waste trucks, trains, and barges bound for Yucca on our roads, rails, and waterways could release catastrophic amounts of radiation in the event of severe accidents or terrorist attacks. Many tens of thousands of shipments would be required, several per day for decades into the future. They would roll through 45 states and many major urban centers like Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Chicago, the Twin Cities, and St. Louis. 50 million Americans live within 2 miles of these routes. The American people can put a stop to this mobile Chernobyl, and we are urging to not only call the Capitol Switchboard, but you can sign up at yuccapetition.org and get your loved ones to do it too. On behalf of the future, on behalf of the safety of the planet, I'm here in support of Earth Day. Let's make it every day. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joan Mulhern. I'm Senior Legislative Counsel for Earth Justice Legal Defense Fund. Clean Water Act rules are now being rewritten by big polluters through the Bush administration. Since taking office, this administration has undertaken a series of regulatory actions that are systematically and dramatically weakening protections for our waters. What does this mean for waterways across the country? It means more raw sewage in rivers and beaches, more mining and industrial waste in streams and wetlands, more toxic discharges and polluted runoff in lakes and rivers, more filling and destruction of wetlands. Members of the public and members of Congress who care about clean water and public health must speak up now and tell the Bush administration to listen to the people, not the polluters, and stop this assault on laws that protect our waters. People who want to take action on clean water and other issues that are part of this campaign should go to the saveourenvironment.org website. Thank you.
I'm Brent Blackwelder, President of Friends of the Earth. Most Americans are deeply concerned about toxic waste, and for more than 2 decades, the organizations here have been supporting the Superfund law and the cleanup of these toxic waste dumps. The cornerstone of that law was the idea that the polluter must pay. President Bush has turned that principle on its head. Now it's pay the polluter. Why? Major campaign contributions, because the polluter pay principle would require the chemical and oil industry to shell out. Under the Superfund tax, which is now expired, they were paying over $1 billion a year to help fund the cleanup. That has expired, and the administration has refused to support the reauthorization of this. So now it's pay the polluter instead of the polluter pay, and the tragedy is that most rural Americans drink groundwater. Half of all the public in the United States relies on groundwater, and the vast overwhelming majority of the Superfund sites pollute groundwater. This has got to stop. It's featured, the Superfund disaster is featured in this year's Green Scissors report, supported by most groups. You can find it on the web at greenscissors.org.
Good morning. My name is Don Barry. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Wilderness Society. The Bush administration seems determined to weaken or eliminate the basic laws that protect our national parks, our national forests, wildlife refuges, and other public lands, all on behalf of big corporations. This means aggressive oil and gas drilling in our wildest places like the Arctic Wildlife Refuge, accelerated clear-cutting in untouched national forests, and thousands upon thousands of dirty and loud polluting snowmobiles in places like Yellowstone and other national parks. I should note that with regard to snowmobiles in the national park system, this will become the new Park Service uniform if the Bush administration has its way with regards to snowmobiling in Yellowstone National Park. For an administration that likes to see things simply, Here's an Earth Day lesson that they can get. Polluting and destroying America's special places is bad. Protecting our nation's wilderness heritage is good. With regards to our public lands, this is truly an administration that knows the cost of everything and the value of nothing. We have recently, in the Wilderness Society, has just issued a new report called A Hostile Corporate Takeover, the Bush and the Environment on Earth Day 2002. It's down on the table down below, and we'd offer to hand out copies to you when you leave the press conference. Thank you very much.
Good morning, I'm Kevin Curtis, and I'm next to the last speaker, too. I'm Kevin Curtis with the National Environmental Trust and the Heritage Forest Campaign. My Earth Day message is simple. The Bush administration, on behalf of the forest products industry and other special interests, is moving to dismantle protections for almost 60 million acres of our nation's remaining roadless areas and public lands. The Bush administration, in doing this, is ignoring public sentiment that was expressed during a 4-year process that included over 600 public meetings and generated over 2 million comments. Instead, they're moving up to open up many of these lands to commercial interests, including mining and logging, and are not defending the roadless rule in court. So, on Earth Day 2002, I join my colleagues and the public in calling for the Bush administration to stop protecting special interests and to start protecting the environment. Thank you.
I'm Betsy Loyalist, Political Director at the League of Conservation Voters. As the 2002 elections draw near, it's clear Americans see the environment as a growing problem and voting as a way to fix those problems. The environment has become an important factor in the voting decisions of 82% of Americans, and pro-environment candidates are preferred to their opponents by 39% margin, according to a recent League of Conservation Voters Education Fund poll. Americans believe that protecting the environment starts at home, but they want to make sure that it doesn't stop in Washington. This concludes the participants' remarks. To take action on these campaigns, go to our website, saveourenvironment.org. And now, before we take questions, we'd like to show our ad one more time. Thanks.
If you watch the local stations carefully, you'll see the ad.
By the way, there are copies of the print ads in people's packets, and beta copies of this ad are available for all folks who want them in the back, as well as a video news release that we produced for today as well. Why don't we start with some questions if people have them, and we'll try this one more time. If we don't, that's okay. But questions?
With the Senate poised to vote on energy legislation this week, get your thoughts on whether or not you endorse the product that's come out of the Senate so far?
And as the bill stands today, the Sierra Club opposes the bill. There are not sufficient amendments pending at this point to turn it into a product that would provide the kind of energy policy that America needs and wants.
What would it take for you all to support the bill coming out of the Senate? Is there one specific thing that you're looking for?
There's several specific things we're looking for. We're looking for an energy bill that actually does something to reduce our dependence on oil. Something on the order of 1 million barrels a day would be appropriate. Something that really does move us in a significant way toward greater reliance on renewables for power generation, and something that does no harm to our lands and our health in terms of weakening standards for air, water, or developing inappropriate public lands. Now, it was a great thing that the Senate voted against drilling the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge last week, and that makes it a little less worse of a bill, but it doesn't make it a good energy policy.
Well, briefly, I'm John Adams, what would make it a good bill is if CAFE were added to it. And without that, it doesn't really meet the test that would have us want to support it.
Let us show the spot one more time. We could have questioners introduce themselves. That would be helpful. And people who respond to questions, introduce yourselves one more time when you respond. Let's just show the TV ad one more time. Apologize for the delay.
Big corporations are asking the Bush administration exactly what they want. Problem is, they're getting it. Send a message to the Bush administration to stop helping big corporations trample our environmental laws. Go to saveourenvironment.org.
Thank you. And again, there are copies of the tape as well as copies of the video news release available in the back. Thanks. Eric first.
Do you folks see any room for compromise on the President's Clear Skies initiative? And would you insist that carbon dioxide be part of the equation in any agreement this year or next?
I think collectively it's fair to say that we are interested in Senator Jeffords' legislation that includes carbon dioxide because the problem of global climate change is so absolutely central to the future of the environment that there really is no room to go forward without that. Similarly, as I indicated in very brief welcoming remarks, the Clear the Skies proposal undermines the Clean Air Act and actually will make things slightly worse in the future. So I think that's something we're going to have to stick to pretty strongly.
I think it's fair to say we all agree that we should strengthen the Clean Air Act, but it has to be done the right way to control all four pollutants in a much more serious way. Unfortunately, the Clear Skies proposal weakens current law compared to what it would take to implement the current law, does not deal with global warming and gas emissions, and actually allows some trading that, and if you live in particular areas, you're not going to benefit at all from the Clear Skies proposal.
Yeah, Gene, I didn't introduce myself. I just wanted to say, Dr. Robert Musil, Physicians for Social Responsibility. But since everyone else has shown a report, Clear the Air and Physicians for Social Responsibility are releasing in New York today an extensive analysis of the health effects of dirty power plants. And it's absolutely essential that we take care of this problem. And that's the bottom line.
I'm Craig Obie with the National Parks Conservation Association. Just to add briefly on the administration's air proposals. One of the things the administration is consistently talking about doing is eliminate the very programs under the Clean Air Act that are directed at protecting air in parks. So we're very concerned about that, and as long as that continues to be the case, we'll have a significant problem with their proposals.
Elizabeth Sjogren from the Los Angeles Times. A couple weeks ago, the Dave Matthews Band was in town, and now I see that you're in town, Ms. Raitt, talking about the environment in both cases. Could you tell us a little bit about why you think it's important for the music industry to participate in this, if you do, or whether you're doing this not related to your high status and people's appreciation of the music world?
Well, I don't know if the music industry has any interest in the environment, although I certainly insist on all my products with my name on them being out of recycled materials. I think artists have a long tradition of being supporters of causes of various, certainly peace and justice in the environment. From the Musicians United for Safe Energy, the fight to switch to alternative fuels. We are way behind what Europe has just racing. Even a poster child for the nuclear industry, France, is following Denmark's lead and switching to what is more economically a boon industry and something that we could easily have the resources to switch over and provide jobs, get us out of a foreign affairs mess, and in many ways go into this century with being a leader when we're really behind the scenes here in terms of alternative energies, and we have to look at the reason why our dependence on oil is so strong. and an answer to why musicians are involved, because we're citizens first. We breathe the same air and drink the same water, and we have sensitive hearts and very astute minds. I do my homework and educate myself. I come from a political Quaker background, and it is my job to try to make the world better. And if I can use my voice to get groups that don't have the money to buy the big op-ed piece opposite any kind of major newspaper editorial page, then by me showing up sometimes and lending my voice and my fame, I can get a little bit more attention sometimes. Although with this august body here, it looks like you guys showed up anyway. So I'm proud to be representing the musicians community who acts out of conscience and will continue to be town criers for what we think is right.
Randy Shostak with EOS, the newspaper of the American Geophysical Union. I'd like to get your reactions to the recent leadership changes at the IPCC.
Well, we're not happy that the change has taken place or will be taking place. We thought the leadership was well respected around the country, very distinguished scientist heading it up. And to make him change and bring in an engineer and bring in someone that doesn't have the full faith of the community that is going to be making the scientific recommendations, we think is a mistake.
Brent Blackwelder, president of Friends of the Earth. All the evidence indicates that the ExxonMobil Corporation had a heavy hand in getting Watson displaced, and ExxonMobil is a big hand in writing the energy policy of this administration and, in fact, of the bill that passed the House of Representatives.
I'm Greg Wetzel with Natural Resources Defense Council. If you go to our website and search the documents that were handed over by the Department of Energy, you can actually find the letter from ExxonMobil suggesting to this administration that they should displace the scientist heading the IPCC, Dr. Robert Watson, and put an economist in there instead. Thank you.
Yes, Plato of Global Horizons. What's your response when the Bush administration says that its goals are the same as yours? It's just the methodology that's different. The carrot is more effective than the stick.
Well, clearly, when you look at the specific proposals, that's just not true. You look at Clear Skies as the best example. Their Clear Skies proposal would weaken the Clean Air Act compared to the current law enforced properly. So it's one thing to talk nice rhetoric about we want clean air. When you look at their details, which they actually put out on Clear Skies, it's clear their proposal would weaken the Clean Air Act. And on issue after issue, from public lands to wild places to wild forests, they are working closely with big corporations to weaken current environmental laws and environmental regulations.
The Bush administration has said that they have 11 out of 12 Sierra Club points for a sound energy plan. We figured they must have been getting their math work done by Anderson Consulting, but in fact, they probably mention 11 out of the 12 things that we have in our energy plan, but we call for meaningful investment in renewables, and they mention it in passing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Roger Slickeyes and Defenders of Wildlife, I point out, too, that a lot of the focus here today is on their use of executive authority to implement the laws. If we were on the same page, we wouldn't be having to go to court to try to force them to obey the laws. Our view is that they ought to be enforcing and implementing the environmental laws we have. What we're finding in case after case after case is that they are either ignoring the law or they're essentially welcoming industry into court so they can reach a court settlement favorable to industry. So if you look not just at the legislative proposals but the executive authority, you'll find that we have a totally different view of what you're supposed to do to implement the environmental laws of this country.
I just want to mention carbon. The fact that there is no proposal yet by this administration that will begin to help us reduce this heavy loading of carbon in the atmosphere is really so fundamentally in opposition to what we're all talking about that it's hard to get on the same page.
I just want to say very briefly, when faced with this problem with patients who for 20 or 30 years say, "Doctor, I'm planning to change my lifestyle," and it doesn't happen, it's actually time for a serious medical intervention, and this patient needs to be hospitalized. I think the voluntary approach has led to increases in carbon dioxide throughout the Clinton administration, which obviously was far more committed to the subject. So the current approach just won't work.
Mark Mueller with Energy News Live. For Bonnie Raitt, there seems to be any number of environmental issues that are out there today that you could address. I was curious to know why you're focusing your remarks on Yucca Mountain today.
Well, someone had to do it. I have been an anti-nuclear activist since I got involved with the Karen Silkwood case, and I think I've done maybe 10 or 15 concerts on Yucca Mountain alone, and we've done lots of press conferences, and I salute the governor of Nevada and the mayor of Las Vegas and the whole state of Nevada, which will not sit still for this. And anytime there's grassroots organizations that need our support, the nuclear issue, especially in light of September 11th and the increased terrorist risk and the absolute anecdotal evidence that the nuclear plants were actually targeted. I think this is foremost on the front burner, and that's why I'm speaking about it. Plus, the vote is coming up in the next couple of months, so sounding the alarm.
Russell Lokheimer from Corporate Crime Reporter. You've indicated the previous administration was better than this one, or someone just did, and that you've included Congressman Gephardt's statement in here. I didn't see a Republican statement or another party statement. On issues like mountaintop removal, for example, I know that the position was virtually the same. So could you address the question of mountaintop removal and why the partisanship here?
Thanks for the question. This is Joan Mulhern from Earth Justice Legal Defense Fund. It's a timely question. The administration, the Bush administration, has announced publicly that it plans to, perhaps as early as by the end of this month, change Clean Water Act regulations to allow industries, including the coal mining industry, to dump their waste in waters and essentially bury those waters forever. They're changing a 25-year-old regulation that was adopted during the Carter administration that for the last 2.5 decades has prevented the Army Corps of Engineers from issuing permits for these kinds of industrial waste fills. And it's true that under the Clinton administration, a proposal was made also to change this rule. The one difference is, in response to public comment, over 17,000 public comments, the opposition of, I think, all of the groups represented here today, and a number of Republicans in Congress, led by Chris Shays and then Representative Rick Lazio, the Clinton administration declined to change that rule. So the difference is that they listened to the public opposition to this rule change, and the Bush administration has announced that despite that opposition, they plan to go ahead and just issue a final rule any day now.
Just on the general point about bipartisanship, we obviously work very closely with Republicans and Democrats in Congress. We're proud to note that there are 8 Republicans who stood up to the president and big oil and voted against drilling in the Arctic Refuge. The 4-pollutant Clean Power Act that we support in both the House and the Senate, which is contrasted with the president's Clear Skies proposal, is in fact a bipartisan sponsored bill in both the House and the Senate.
Jean-Michel Stoulig, AFP, Agence France Presse. Ms. Lawless, you mentioned polls about the interest of voters for environment. Do your polls also show any change in future general or presidential elections related to environment, or is that premature?
The poll that we did was not a political poll, but I can tell you that a recently released Gallup poll, which follows along much of the same line as our environmental polling, indicates that the environment is an important voting factor for over 3/4 of the public. In LCV's political campaigns, in our electoral campaigns, we take national and important environmental issues that are voted on here in Washington, D.C., and translate those for local voters. And those often become the most outstanding issue that distinguishes between the pro-environmental and anti-environmental candidate that we're looking at. So that's a C4 answer to your question, but we know that this issue works, and we know that this is an important voting issue, and we can tell, as was mentioned with the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge vote, it was a clear bipartisan victory. It was a clear signal that environmental protection is important to the public, and I think the Senate responded to grassroots pressure and to political pressure.
Great. If no further questions, thank you all for coming.
Later in the day, the American Enterprise Institute held an Earth Day news conference. A fellow at the AEI, Stephen Hayward, discussed his annual report on environmental trends.